Welcome to another edition of the Bucks Latest Podcast, a podcast where we discuss everything Milwaukee Bucks basketball. I'm your host, Jalen Dixon, and today we got a couple of things to get into. But before we get started, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit that post notification bell so you always know when we're dropping new videos. And hit that hype button on YouTube so we can continue to grow in the algorithm. Shout out to those who are already subscribed. Let's go ahead and get right into today's episode. I would also like to apologize for last episode where it sounded like I was locked in somebody's dungeon. Unfortunately, I did not realize that with this echo knob feature on my new microphone, that it was turned slightly to the right, or a lot more to the right than I had thought, which I thought originally it was set to zero. It was indeed not. And so it sounded like I was stuck at a train station or being held captive in a game of Dungeons and Dragons. So I do apologize to you guys for that audio experience. I was listening back to the podcast yesterday, and I hear it in the background, and I'm like, what is that? And it just completely threw me off, and I know that probably affected the listening experience. We indeed did fix that. The knob is indeed turned all the way to the left now. But let's go ahead and get right into today's episode. And this one should be a little bit shorter as far as being able to break down the two guard position, because two guards are a little bit more straightforward than point guard in today's NBA as far as like what they provide. So the breakdowns for each of these players will be a little bit shorter. I know last episode went about an hour, probably going to be closer to about. We'll see we'll see where the time takes us. But let's start off with the news of today, which is that the Milwaukee Bucks are maintaining contact with Benedict Mathurin amid the Watson drama. Talking about Peyton Watson, of course, for the Denver Nuggets, where things are still kind of a bit at a standstill, where there's a real world where Peyton Watson could return to the Denver Nuggets on the qualifying offer, but also the Cleveland Cavaliers have made it very apparent that they are trying to get they truly are trying to get Peyton Watson. They're really trying to get Peyton Watson and Jonathan Kuminga on the team. Certain reports have indicated. They already have started to create flexible space to possibly be able to absorb a possible $20+ million Watson contract by moving off of Dennis Schroeder. The next play that they're going for is to try to move Max Strus to also free up a significant amount of money that could possibly allow them to absorb Benedict Mathurin's contract, because as everybody knows, right now, until the Denver Nuggets move off of like one of like Aaron Gordon, Jamal Murray, um Cam Johnson, right? Unless they're willing to move off of one of their key contributors that have a pretty significant salary. Christian Brown is another one that they could possibly end up moving. Until they do that, they are a second apron team, which means they cannot really absorb any contract in return for Peyton Watson right now, right? So in a sign and trade, they can't really take back very much salary, if any salary at all, in exchange for Peyton Watson, which is one of the reasons why the Bucks were on the list in the first place, because they could send a player back along with draft capital in exchange for Peyton Watson, with the fact that they are more so absorbing Peyton Watson into their 22.5 or $25.5 million trade exception that they have. So essentially, that would be their way of taking in Peyton Watson while still being able to send salary out in the form of like an AJ Green, for example. Um, Especially because again, the Denver Nuggets are like in the second apron now. So keeping in touch with Benedict Mathurin. For me, I don't think it makes any sense. I think that if you're gonna pivot from if you're gonna pivot from Peyton Watson, I think that the thing that makes the most sense is to go the Jonathan Kuminga route. Benedict Mathurin is a true heart and heart two guard. He's a true to space two guard. He's not a small forward. He definitely cannot play up to the power forward position. He is a true two guard. He's definitely not a one. He is solely a two in this league, in my personal opinion. And I think we just have too many guys at the guard position where I don't think that even you're bringing in Benedict Mathurin off straight vibes, in my personal opinion, at that point. You're bringing him in off straight vibes because you have Ryan Rollins, Braden Burries, Tyler Hero, Kaspera Shakashonis, Gary Trent Jr., Karis LeVert, AJ Green. You you have too many guards in this rotation, and Benedict Mathurin is a true heart and heart two guard. In my personal opinion, I don't understand why that Benedict Mathurin is even associated with the Bucks outside of the Bucks just wanting to do something with that $25.5 million trade exception. Like it's just burning in John Horst's pocket, and he got to do something with it. So it's like, Benedict Mathurin's a talented young player. We're trying to get talented young guys on this team. This is a way for us to go get them. It's like, and of course, the only means to get Benedict Mathurin, similar to Jonathan Kuminga or similar to Peyton Watson, is like via sign and trade. So there is that element of it that does need to also get conducted. Where of course maybe they could send like an AJ Green out in a trade for Benedict Mathurin, but like I'm not giving up first round capital. I'm not sending first round capital along with AJ Green to the Clippers in exchange for Benedict Mathurin. Like, no, I'm not. Like, what for? He's been sitting out in free agency this long. His market's clearly not that crazy, as far as I'm concerned. The Chicago Bulls and I believe the Pelicans are also another team that's been in the mix for a big. And those are, by the way, those are two teams that genuinely need two guard production. More so the Bulls than the Pelicans, because the Pelicans at least have like Jordan Poole and like stuff like that, where if they can get good play from their guard rotation with DeJounte Murray and Jeremiah Fears, and they still got Jordan Poole on that team and stuff like that. They at least still have a pretty decent guard rotation. I've talked about it on previous other platforms that like the Chicago Bulls like backup guard rotation is freaking terrible. So like why Benedict Mathurin just like isn't like already a Chicago Bull is like beyond me. That's Bulls bias. So you guys can go check out other platforms for that one as far as like my thoughts on that whole thing with Chicago Bulls and Benedict Mathurin. But I mean, in my personal opinion, I don't understand why the Bucks are even in this race for Benedict Mathurin. If you're looking for a power forward, small forward kind of player, which seemingly is what I'm getting from the Peyton Watson thing, then I think that you just go after Jonathan Kuminga. If you don't believe in Jonathan Kuminga and it's Peyton Watson or bust, throw your hands up and say, look, our roster is already 17 deep. It's already going to be a hard job for Taylor Jenkins to figure out how he's going to distribute minutes for all these guys. What's the point of going after just another player, just throwing money at another guy who you have to figure out if he's going to play? What's the point? I don't see the point in it. And maybe this would have made a little bit more sense had you let Gary Trent Jr. walk like we all thought you were going to do. Maybe it would have made a little bit more sense. Because at the end of the day, right, Tyler Hero's not signed to a long-term extension. Ryan Rollins only has one more deal on his contract past this year for $4 million before he can become an unrestricted free agent. So maybe in that sense, getting Benedict Mathurin on a deal now, knowing you have Braden Burries, knowing you still have Kasparas Giannis on his rookie deal as well. Okay, cool. Then I get it. But you gave Gary Trent Jr. $64 million over the last 4 years. All indications from the Bucks make it sound like they would like to get a long-term deal done with Tyler Hero in the future. So what does adding another guard actually do for this team? Again, at the small forward, power forward position, you have plenty with Nate Ahmed, New Uzman Jang, and Jaime Jaquez Jr. as well. And then you got to include Khalil Ware at small forward, power forward as well, because he's more of a power. Well, you got to include Khalil Ware at power forward as well, because he can also play that, along with playing small ball center. So like this team was already struggling with like depth chart issues as far as like figuring out just like how all these guys are gonna get on the floor. At least if you're gonna do all of this and be in the mix for a player, let it be somebody who you like thinking is gonna like legit crack the rotation. I think there's a world where like Benedict Mathurin, as talented of a player as he is in this group, where you have I didn't even mention Kevin Porter Jr. in this group. Who is Benedict Mathurin is not playing over Ryan Rollins, Tyler Hero, Kevin Porter Jr. In my personal opinion, he should not be soaking up minutes over Braden Burries. And I think Kasparas Giannis is a real player. So where is the minutes for Benedict Mathurin? We don't even know where the minutes for Gary Trent Jr. is going to come from, and he has to play, making $14 to $15 million off this dang contract. He's making $14 to $15 million a year. He has to play. And I don't even know how he's getting on the floor. How is Benedict Mathurin getting on the floor? To me, it doesn't make any sense. at least with Peyton Watson, I could see a world where you say, nah, that's our starting power forward. We're going to get Miles Turner traded as quickly as humanly possible so that Khalil Ware can be our starting center of the future, and that's how we do things. We reunite the two UCLA guys with Jaime Jaquez and Peyton Watson. There's always the world that maybe Jaime Jaquez, even in restricted free agency, ends up maybe on a different team because another team's willing to pay for his services in a way that maybe the Bucks aren't in a situation where the Bucks are more focused on re-signing Tyler Hero and getting an extension done with Ryan Rollins and so on and so forth. Where maybe Jaime Jaquez falls to the wayside because they're like, we got Ousmane Dieng, we got Nate Ahmed on the team, we still have Peyton Watson, we're good, we're fine, right? But Benedict Mathurin, I don't understand it. And I don't even think Benedict Mathurin is a bad player, but for this team, again, maybe he would have made more sense if we didn't bring back Gary Trent Jr. on $14 to $15 million per year. Because in that situation, Benedict Mathurin could still at least be like the third shooting guard, maybe second shooting guard at best on this team. If you really want to like play for win now and like have Braden Burries be like truly in a learning season, which I don't suggest, but like if that's really the route you want to go, but I just don't understand it. Let's go ahead and actually talk about our two guard position for what it's worth, right? Let's go ahead and get into Bucks by the Numbers, the series where we break down each of the top three players at each of our five main positions: point guard, shooting guard, small forward, power forward, and center. In yesterday's episode, we did Bucks by the Numbers covering our point guard position. That was Ryan Rollins, Kevin Porter Jr., and Kasparis Yakashonis. Today, we're going to start off with Tyler Hero. And as far as I'm concerned, again, I told you guys this episode should be a lot easier to kind of go through because the two guard position is very straightforward. The primary action of the two guard, more than anything, especially in today's NBA, is put the ball in the dang basket. They're not really asked to initiate offense nearly as much. They are asked to be off the ball guys, on the ball guys in ways that the whole thing is you just go get a bucket in any way possible. And by initiate offense, I mean in a way where they're genuinely meant to like facilitate. There's not too many two guards out here that are like real creators that's not outside of self creation. That's really the big thing for the two guard position. It's either self created offense or offense off ball. It's not really a whole lot of creating as a distributor. Let's go ahead and talk about it from this perspective. Hero is a 6-foot shot making combo guard, primarily an on ball scorer who can also function as a movement shooter and secondary pick and roll handler. His scoring profile is built around pull up jumpers, threes, floaters, and foul line accuracy rather than rim pressure or defensive playmaking. So, what does that break down as? Tyler Hero is a 1B offensive initiator, meaning he's somebody who can essentially be a secondary ball handler for you. He can be a do it wherever all three levels. Again, as a dribble driver, not as effective as a dribble driver. We'll talk about that a little bit later on, but he could do it as a live dribble driver, he could do it as a mid-range shooter, and he could do it as a movement three-point shooter, both off the dribble and off catch and shoot. He is definitively a shooting guard only. I do not believe that Tyler Hero scales to be a point guard in any real way. I think he truly is a two guard through and through. So I think that the most important thing, of course, coming off of last season, 20.5 points per game, along with 4.8 rebounds, 4.1 assists, shot 48% from the field and 37.8% from three. And he took nearly 7 3-point attempts per game. Again, notice though, did not get to the free throw line very much, less than 3 free throw attempts per game. So this is a guy who is not necessarily a live at the rim kind of player. He does a lot of his work off movement shooting, off the dribble pull-up jumpers, and is just really focused on being able to hit shots at a high level. He's a high mid-range. He's better at the two perimeter levels than he is at that getting to the rim perspective. So if we talk about 3 to 5 level scoring, he has those back 3 levels, the 15, 18, and 20 plus. He's got that down pat, but the 10 and in is where Tyler Hero is not nearly as effective as some other guards, like a Kevin Porter Jr., like a Ryan Rollins, like we talked about the other day. Again, I think the biggest thing that I take away from Tyler Hero, and you saw this in the different iterations with the Miami Heat. Again, this is a guy who, as far as I'm concerned, his best play type, like kind of over the course of his entire career with the Miami Heat, was being able to deal with second units. If you notice, there was always situations with the Miami Heat where Tyler Hero was in and out of the starting lineup. For example, even last season, he was constantly in battle for minutes with Norman Powell. And quite frankly, if we're talking about the trade market, by the way, Norman Powell on a 2-year deal as a trade chip for the Chicago Bulls probably is a better trade chip than Tyler Hero at his 30 million on an expiring contract. Because Norman Powell kind of is a lot of what Tyler Hero is, but can do a lot more off the dribble, while and also is much more dangerous as a live dribble driver, getting to the basket and things of that nature. Tyler Hero is a true floor spacing two guard. He is a very he's look, he's not good defensively. He's not a very good defender. He's not a very good point of attack defender. He's not a very good help defender. This is a guy. I know. Don't let the 1.2 steals fool you. That is the Miami Heat system creating action. He spent a lot of last season playing next to guys like Bam Adebayo, Andrew Wiggins, and Davion Mitchell, who create a lot of havoc around you. You can luck yourself into one steal when you got those guys poking around, playing at the point of attack, and being able to create havoc around you. And that's the biggest thing. He's going to need real defensive infrastructure when he's on the floor. Tyler Hero is, and that's why, for example, playing next to Ryan Rollins is so important versus playing next to like Kevin Porter Jr. Like Kevin Porter Jr. is a useful defender, but he's like a average to above average defender at best. Like Ryan Rollins has above average to, I don't want to call him elite, but he's a pretty strong defender at the point guard position. So that's a really good point of attack defender to have next to Tyler Hero. Very similar to like how they would place Davion Mitchell next to Tyler Hero in those lineups to kind of help protect him on the perimeter. You're gonna have to hide Tyler Hero a lot as well. This is one of those guys who, again, is taken advantage of as far as he is as a defender. That's what, again, through and through. Tyler Hero is a scoring guard, utility scoring option is how I phrase it at the bottom of the graphic, because that's just what gets the most out of him. Again, in my personal perspective, I think that you have to be able to have somebody who can be a strong enough point of attack defender next to him, and I think you have to be able to have guys that can guard around him. Having two prominent rim protectors in Khalil Ware and Miles Turner as the backline behind Tyler Hero is a great way to make up for his inability to be an effective point of attack defender. I think also having a strong point of attack defender um like Ryan Rollins, and having somebody like a Jaime Jaquez fits to a certain degree. Usman Jang might be a little bit better at this. Um, but the goal, right, is to not make Tyler Hero the guy initiate unless he's facing second units. If you just have him picking on second units, um, if you just have him picking on second units, then I think he can. I think you can you can quote unquote play through star and just let Tyler Hero cook as like your Lou Williams, Jamal Crawford type of guy against second units. In the starting lineup, you're going to want to have more creation around him, um, in order to kind of make up for some of his misgivings. Because again, he does not create rim pressure. So he's strictly a jump shooting. He's strictly a jump shooting guard. I think again, I wrote it here. The lineup type to avoid is a small offense only backcourt in which Hero must defend elite primary guards while also handling primary creation. That configuration can produce attractive regular season offense, but it leaves too little margin defensively and raises the chance that opponents hunt the matchup in playoff setting. For a Buck specific offense hierarchy, the ideal formula is simple. Put Hero next to a front court star who can command help. That was more so talking about Giannis Antetokounmpo. I think that you can still have somebody like, I think Khalil Ware is just gonna be like, I'm not gonna lie to you guys. I haven't glazed Khalil Ware very much just yet in the way that I know I'm gonna go in depth about him when we get to the center position slash power forward position. Um, but like I think Khalil Ware is gonna be I think he's gonna be a real dude. I think for the Bucks, where he truly is gonna be able to like have his way. Like I think if you look at what Taylor Jenkins was able to get out of Jaren Jackson Jr., which by the way included a Defensive Player of the Year at the power forward position, I think Khalil Ware is going to be a real dude. But nonetheless, surround them with two rangy defenders and let Hero alternate between off ball shooting and second side creation. His 3 point shooting volume, paired with the fact that he has a high assist to turnover ratio, being 4.1 to 1.2, supports that role more cleanly than pure heliocentric assignment. So, pure heliocentric assignment again goes to the idea of saying, okay, if he's not starting and he's coming off the bench as six man, okay, let him just go out and go get buckets. Bump it. He's going up against second units. I think he can go win a one-on-one matchups consistently in that lineup. If he's going to be a starter at the two guard, which I think for this Bucks team he's projected to be, having Ryan Rollins, having that back line with Khalil Ware and Miles Turner, having another star or having another on-ball creator in Jaime Jaquez, who can be at least an average to above average defender as well, is a strong infrastructure around him both on offense and defense. But again, the biggest thing for Tyler Hero is he is an offense only player. And that is something that you have to build around. That's something that you have to build in spite of. And sometimes can be kind of difficult to work within. But his jump shooting capability is just so dangerous that that's how he constantly still finds minutes on the floor. Okay, boom. So now let's talk about Braden Burries. Braden Burries is a little bit easier to get kind of a breakdown on because a lot of the stuff, if you go back and listen to my description of Ryan Rollins, Braden Burries is a lot of what Ryan Rollins is, but kind of just has a little bit more potential because, I mean, A, he's younger. B, he's doing it at an earlier age. C, I think there's a little bit more of an athletic pop potential there from him. And I think, quite frankly, Braden Burries, he showed in Summer League more particularly that he's just more aggressive or has the capability of being a little bit more aggressive at getting to his shots. So, Braden Burries shot 49, 39, 80 from in his shooting splits in his 1 year with Arizona. The 39.1 3 point shooting mark makes him a very effective relocation shooter and spot up shooter. I think one of the biggest things that you'll be able to see out of Braden Burries as an off the ball creator is what he's able to do off flare screens, off V cuts, off of back screens into into jumpers. That he's going to be a guy that off the catch movement shooting is going to be a great way to be able to utilize Braden Burries and get him into rhythm. I think just as much as he can be a downhill player, I think being able to get him into his rhythm shooting motion is going to be a great way to just kind of incorporate him early into offense. As a secondary pick and roll creator, he's not somebody that's going to get a ton of assists. If you guys saw during Summer League, he was a guy who he scored a pretty decent amount, did have a handful of assists, but the biggest thing with Braden Burries is just that he doesn't turn over the ball. So he's not going to be a big time creator. Again, only averaged 2.4 assists in his time in college, but um and for his full splits, by the way, 16.1 points, 4.9 rebounds, 2.4 assists, 1.5 steals per game. That 2.4 assists again doesn't really scream out to you like point guard. Like again, Brandon Burries is more of like a combo guard, but I think it's because he can be a secondary pick and roll creator, similar to Tyler Hero. I think he can be a good passer, probably a better passer than Tyler Hero, despite the fact that their assist numbers are very different. And I think that the biggest separator between Braden Burries and Tyler Hero is that I think Braden Burries can be even more effective at scoring and creating without turning the ball over. Again, we saw a lot of that in summer league, where despite Braden Burries being more of a downhill player, where you're more at risk of getting the ball poked out, getting more up tempo pressure and things of that nature, Braden Burries did a really good job of being able to keep the ball under contain. And I think one of the biggest things that also stood out to me is that this guy can put together some big games. We saw in Summer League a handful of big scoring performances. He also had 31 points against Colorado, 29 points against BYU. Excuse me. Yeah, 31 points at Colorado, 29 points at BYU, 24 points at Baylor, including 5 points in the final 27 seconds of that Baylor game, which was huge for Arizona. But I think the biggest thing for Braden Burries as a rookie, I think the thing that's gonna get him minutes, and I know everybody says, like, this is like duh, it's been a rinse and repeat. Think about it with any of some of the better players in this league, how they cut their teeth is on the defensive end. We saw it with Kawhi Leonard. We've seen it with, like, Jimmy Butler. Lesser players, like, if you think about lesser players, but like at the guard position, you think about like a DeJounte Murray, guys who cut their teeth by being defenders first and then being able to show their creation ability over the course of time. I think with the fact that he plays with quick hands and creates steals, good rebounder for 6'4" at the guard position, by the way, as well. Physical build allows him to be a threat against smaller guards. He's somebody that I think defensively, as a point of attack defender, again, very similar to Ryan Rollins, that's going to be the thing that I think he can really find his way onto the floor. You're not going to go out there and say, go be a stopper. He's not that kind of player. But he is somebody who can be a strong wing defender who I think can slide up and down the positional scale a little bit because of his physicality. I think he can guard 1 through 3 with a little bit more like autonomy, quite frankly. Like, I think he's somebody who I think he can slide up and down the positional spectrum defensively without necessarily disrupting what you want to put out on the floor around him on the defensive end. Like, I don't think I think he's permeable. I think that you can play him next to a bunch of different lineups without him necessarily disrupting things defensively in a way that, for example, Tyler Hero, you kind of have to build a defense that allows you to hide Tyler Hero. I think Braden Burries can be somebody that maybe is not the center of your defense, but he can be a cog of that defense. Braden Burries, for example, could be somebody as a combo guard that you can feel comfortable playing next to Tyler Hero because he can be somebody that takes on the harder perimeter matchup defensively, right? So I think obviously, the best operation for Braden Burries is have another star creator next to him. That's your Tyler Hero. That's your Kevin Porter Jr. type. That's like the high volume scoring creator. And then you have three other, shooters slash defenders around him. Again, the small forward position is a little tricky because I think Jaime Jaquez is probably our best defender at small forward right now between him, Uzman Jang, and Nate Ahmed. Maybe that changes if you get Peyton Watson because you could always maybe put Peyton Watson at that 3. Now you have him, Khalil Ware, and Miles Turner. You have a ton of defense. Peyton Watson showed in a small sample size, but a sample size nonetheless, not last season, that he can be a capable 3-point shooter during that big stretch where he was kind of going off with Nikola Jokic out of the lineup. He was shooting like 37% from beyond the arc. You pair that with Khalil Ware and Miles Turner, who both shot, 38 plus percent from beyond the arc on, 4 to 5 3-point attempts per game. That gives you, some real defensive backline, along with having some real shooting and floor spacing and having one guy who can kind of control everything at the top of everything with a Tyler Hero or with the Kevin Porter Jr. Again, you don't want to necessarily have to play through Tyler Hero, but when you have another on-ball creator like Braden Burries next to him, where you don't have to put all the onus on Tyler Hero to create, or all the onus even on Kevin Porter Jr. to create, it creates opportunities there. The last thing I want to read out for him is Burry's realistic early career role is a rotation shooting guard who supplies efficient scoring, functional secondary playmaking, strong guard rebounding, and opportunistic defense. His upside is higher if the ball handling and read making grow enough for him to credibly run second units. He can become a versatile starting caliber combo guard rather than just a complementary scorer. And again, this becomes the big question that we always end up having about the Ryan Rollins long term thing. thing. I believe that Ryan Rollins, if you're able to get him on a long-term deal, you should. But the reason why we always have the conversation about possibly trading Ryan Rollins is because a lot of the things that we said about what Ryan was for this team last year is the exact profile of Braden Burries on a cheap contract, a long rookie deal, and you don't have to worry about paying Braden Burries for the next 4 seasons, as opposed to Ryan Rollins, who could be an unrestricted free agent within the next season or two, right? Very different. If you already have a Ryan Rollins kind of player in Braden Burries for what will be a much cheaper contract than what Ryan Rollins is possibly due for on the open market, why pay Ryan Rollins when you have a Braden Burries on the roster already where they play a very similar style? And you have Braden Burries who may even have more upside because of his physical capabilities to do a little bit more because at 6'4", but with a more burly build, can be more dangerous at that position. That's why we keep having those conversations about Ryan Rollins trades, not because we don't like Ryan Rollins, not because we don't think he's not capable, not because we think he's not capable. It's because Braden Burries, who you just drafted at number 10, does a lot of the things that Ryan Rollins does, but he's going to be a cheaper player long term than Ryan Rollins in the, or I should, he's going to be a cheaper player long term when you think about the fact that Ryan Rollins is due to get paid in the more immediate future. I think that's just something to take into consideration. Last but not least, let's go ahead and talk about this bozo right here, man. Gary Trent Jr. Let's go ahead and let's make this one quick, man. Because at the end of the day, Lord, this doesn't even make any sense. Gary Trent Jr. at 6'5", averaged 8.1 points per game last season. Very low on ball usage percentage at 6.8%. Shot 36% from beyond the arc. Of course, we know in his better seasons, he's been more of like a 37 plus percent 3-point shooter. Back in 2024-25, he shot 41.6%. With Milwaukee in 23-24, he shot 39.3%. So the 25-26 season looks more like a down shooting year, which means that, of course, Gary Trent Jr. is one of those, like, floor spacing 3-point shooters at the two guard position. He's a guy who's just going to go down there, knock down shots. He's got a physical build where maybe he can be a little bit effective as a defender. He did show some high upside as a defensive player in his early tenure with the Bucks. And I think, again, I've always mentioned that his better time as an NBA player was more so his stretch with the Portland Trailblazers. But, I mean, he's not a big-time rebounder. Doesn't get he averages like a half a steal a game. Doesn't get any blocks. Like, he pretty much, I mean, he's more of like an off guard. He definitely really can only guard ones and twos. The best way to describe Gary Trent Jr. is at $14 to $15 million a year. Look at Bogdan Bogdanovic. Look at Kevin Herter, right? Look at guys in that ilk. Shoot, look at AJ Green. These are all guys making like $10 million a year, right? Gary Trent Jr. is like that kind of player, but he's making $14 to $15 million when really paying a high 3-point shooter in today's league has basically just been like an auto give him $10 million a year. Again, if you look at Bogdan or you look at Kevin Herter or you look at AJ Green or you look at any of these like shooting guard, high volume 3-point shooters, like high percentage 3-point shooters, that like their whole thing is just basically like the JJ Redick kind of role in the league. They're making like $10 million. And I hate to say that about Bogdan because I really like Bogdan and he could do a lot more than just like the JJ Redick flare screen shooting and stuff like that. He could do a lot more of that, but like he's kind of been relegated to that because of all the injuries over the last few years. But like think of that kind of player. Like if you're that like even like think like Danny Green even, right? And he's not even nearly the kind of defender that Danny Green was for the San Antonio Spurs and stuff like that back in his heyday, San Antonio Spurs and the Toronto Raptors. But think of like that kind of player, spot up shooter, movement shooter, corner three specialist type. And those guys in today's NBA, where all they do is just shoot a bunch of threes and thankfully shoot them at like a really high percentage, 38% and higher, they're making $10 million a year. He's making 14 to 15. Overpaid floor spacer. That's all Gary Trent Jr. is. Overpaid floor spacer. So again, Tyler Hero, secondary shot creator, can be a guy who can maybe play, you can maybe play through on offense if he's going up against second units, but you'd like him to be like a cog of your offense as a starter, as like a 1B ball handler, but you maybe don't want to like play through him. And this is the tricky part when you think about like Ryan Rollins, because I said this in the last episode as well. He's not really like a high volume score kind of guy. So Tyler Hero is a guy who can soak up those shots, but neither one is one you want to like give, you know, 20 shots a game to, right? Neither one of those guys are guys you want taking 18 to 20 shots a game. If they're doing that, then the offense is struggling significantly because you're overly relying on these two guys to create individually. Tyler Hero falls into that category where I think he just does need another creator next to him because you could just overload on him because he's not very physical and he's so reliant on jump shots. If his jump shooting doesn't fall, if his jump shots aren't falling, he's kind of a net negative because he's not getting to the rim, he's not drawing fouls, he's not creating contact in any real way that forces defenses to play off of him. So defenses feel comfortable getting physical with Tyler Hero. Braden Burries, again, I think Braden Burries is essentially a Ryan Rollins clone with a little bit more upside and potential because he has a more physical frame, paired with the fact that I think he has a little bit more athletic pop than Ryan Rollins. So he's pretty much a Ryan Rollins clone, but think a little bit more athletic and a little bit more physically capable. That's kind of the best way to translate Braden Burries in my mind as far as what he can be in the league and what he has the upside to be. And then Gary Trent Jr. is your Kevin Herter, your Bogdan Bogdanovich, your AJ Green kind of player where he's just a floor spacer, but instead of making $10 million or $8 million, he makes $14 to $15 million. Not the best decision the Bucks have made, but a decision nonetheless. With all that being said, this has been another edition of the Bucks Latest Podcast. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Hit that post notification bell so you always know when we're dropping new videos. We are going to talk about the small forward position tomorrow. The projected starter will be Jaime Jaquez, so we'll start there and work our way through. With all that being said, I'll see you guys next time. But until then, peace.